Okay,
Yeah.
great. So let's for the second item, let's just give some reports of what's been going on. I mean, we have, Steve, I thought there was going to be an action at the Travis Air Force Base. Maybe you could start with that. But if other people, Tommaso, I thought there was an action in Italy. If you could give a report on that. Carol, you were at the mobilizations yesterday in New York. If there are others, Ethan, Jay, if you, so we get a little feel of what's, where we are on the ground in this general movement. So Steve, maybe you could start us off.
Maybe Tomas you can start us off.
Okay. Okay, we'll go international. We'll begin with the Italian scene.
Okay. So yes, on the 24th of February, 2 weeks ago, I joined a really big rally in Milan, the city of Milan. We were in 50,000 at the march, and despite the media talk about 20,000 people, but we were more. It was very huge, and our claim as a Communist Workers' Party was is for a free secular and socialist Palestine in a socialist Middle East, and there were other two demonstrations before the 24th, in which in the cities of Florence and Pisa, and it was shameful because the police use batons on students, and this is on behalf of our government led by a post-fascist party, and this is it was shameful. We're in Italy. We're talking a lot about it. There are videos about police that use truncheons on students, and yeah, I think that's all from my side.
Okay, thanks, Tomas. So let me just ask, so are there protests specifically against the repression plan?
And we against the repression, we used used the march of the 24th because the events were previous.
I see. So that helped.
Yeah, we used also the demonstration also to claim this, to talk about talk against the repression made by the police. But in Milan there were no problems with the police.
Yeah. Okay. So Jay had to step away. So Steve, do you want to report on what happened in California?
Yeah, we had a rally of about 25, 30 people at the Travis Air Force Base. And they had some veterans. Air Force veteran was there, and other IWW, and it was small, but it was an important rally. But there was at the same time an anti-war action by the ILWU, about 125 at their Union Hall on the fight against imperialist war. And very good statements of the ILWU talking about internationalism, building an international working class movement. So I'll put a link to it in the video. I videotaped the event. So there were two actions on that day. And one of the things is the PSL which is had a demonstration yesterday. I don't know if you're aware of that. Are people aware of that? There was an International Day of Action yesterday.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Okay, well, there were demonstrations all over the world yesterday. And PSL in the United States organized many of them. So they had a 3,000 yesterday. But in any event, the PSL is not interested in going to bases, military bases. So they're mainly in the cities protesting it, but not at military bases. So we're going to have another action at Travis Air Force Base because it's a major transfer base in the United States to weapons to Israel and Ukraine. We did a video of it too.
Steve, did you get any media coverage?
No.
Okay. All right. And okay, who else then has participated? Okay, Avram.
Yes, I have to be a little guilty because I did participate yesterday in the demonstration, the global demonstration for a ceasefire and for liberation in Palestine. However, I did stay as long as I can. It was like driving rain. It's in Washington Square Park, and the square footage was not great. So it was so packed. It was wonderful, and the audience there was like incredibly diverse, unified, and I think that it was really a really great demonstration.
Well, I was there yesterday also. I didn't see you, but there were somewhere between 7 and 10, and it was driving rain from the minute I stepped out of my house to the time I got home. It rained all day long, and people stayed. And there were about somewhere between 7 and I would say 10,000 people. And the cops were out in full force. Towards the end of the demonstration, hundreds of them came out and they went after people, but I had no idea. Nobody was rowdy. I mean, we were all rowdy, but nobody did anything that was illegal. And so I couldn't figure out what was happening with the police, except for the fact that our mayor is a cop and likes to give people overtime. So, some of it has to do with that. But it was very militant. The problem is the Answer was one of the organizations that organized it. And the guy from Answer really had no answer. It was basically like, all the things that everybody knows, all the tragedies and the calamities that are happening. But he didn't talk about going to the trade unions and having workers stop shipments of military aid or any of that stuff. So there really wasn't, I mean, it was really wonderful and motivated, and people are angry, but there was no direction. So we marched up 6th Avenue for miles, but nobody had anything, nobody put anything forward to except shut it down, which is the usual chance, but it was meaningless basically. So that was the demonstration in New York.
Thanks, Carol. And I think we're going to go to Ethan next for a report, and anyone else that wants to. But I think after that, we do want to kind of continue a follow-up of the critique that Carol has started, kind of an overall critique of where this movement is and where it needs to go if we're really going to stop the genocide. Ethan.
So I've been doing primarily as like the rep for the IWW locally in Gainesville. Most of them can't remember who said it was, but it was here has mainly been our PSL branch, and PSL is not really as they tend to go with Stalinist parties. They're not really interested in well, they are interested in building a movement, but they're not particularly known for being strategically sound. So it's a lot of we hate the US, but not one instance of, I didn't hear one instance of them saying saying like, and they had several opportunities to bring it to me as a union leader and say, are you familiar with these are you familiar with anyone who in here who is working in the weapons industry? Do you have any idea who might be? You know, there are chances we had multiple chances to coordinate, and I kind of implied that to them. They showed no interest in it. It's more like so one thing I noticed with these, the other group that's involved here is Jewish Voice for Peace, and they're a little more interested in, and where they're actually a little more useful. Now, PSL, to be fair, does shut down streets here, and that's been disruptive. And one of the things, we actually nearly shut down a McDonald's, and the only reason that, and the cops actually started getting up and like brandishing guns at us and forcing us to move on. But like it wasn't like they were like starting to reveal their firearms. It was getting really heated. So the other thing, they also like have been threatening that if we decide to step out on the street, they'll start grabbing people and dragging them away. So the cops here are not particularly fond of any protests going on. So like that's, you know, that could evolve into somewhere, but you know, it's not going to happen with coming from the Stalinists, I don't think. And then so then the other group has been Jewish Voice for Peace. They have been a little more useful because they've been being a real headache in the Zionists. This and that has been a little bit more useful, but again, the only other groups have been mostly like active here in the labor movement have been like the bureaucratic AFL-CIO aligned unions, and as people have mentioned, bit of a sticky situation there. A lot of like that leaves the student aligned unions, the student aligned not unions but orgs and stuff like that. You know, we're a student town, so there's going to be a lot of stuff goes around the university. So the status of it is could go somewhere, you know, at least locally. But nobody seems to be willing to actually get into the labor movement and like shut down the factories. There aren't any like organized some of the groups like Food Not Bombs, other things here, you know, they have the desire but not the means to do it. And so some of the groups I've been involved in have been doing that. Sorry, I'm probably over time here, but so I'll pass it on. But
No, Ethan, that was great. Let me just clarify. One, at this last protest, did PSL and other groups block streets? And secondly, when you raised the issue of going to the unions and direct action at arms manufacturers, was that brought up in a meeting, or where was any democratic space created where you could raise these questions?
Thank you for asking. Mostly we've been working through the thing. This has been discussed in some of the things. The IWW has not been on the ground here as much just because we're a smaller branch. It's rebuilding post-COVID. So we have not been able to do that. The group that has been again is PSL, but they are very small. They're very exclusive, and so like when I do discuss things with them, it's usually at protests, and you know, it's like the limits of doing that. They've been but again, like I've been trying to again, like the democratic spaces that do that it seems like there's a lot of other groups that are getting in. They shut down your second question was did they shut down the entire street, or
Yeah, You were just mentioning that the police have come down really hard, and so PSL was second guessing whether they should shut down streets, but it seemed like
so the short version is I was not at the last one was yesterday. I know people who were, but I had to leave before they actually went on the march. So I wasn't actually on the ground for this one. But the one before that, they actually prevented us, and PSL was not willing to part of it was we didn't have like a full like we had like the massive things, but like we had to keep to the sidewalks because the cops barricaded us from doing it, and PSL could have, but they weren't willing. I don't think the cops would have, and there was a big like standstill. I don't actually think the PSL is necessarily to blame for that. I think that, however, there was a
Okay.
the other guys have guns, but the PSL just doesn't seem to be willing to they're always very opportunistic is how I describe them. So, this seemed like one of their instances where that's what they're doing.
Okay. Was when I stepped out, did Steve give a report on the Travis Air Force Base action, or what does he want to?
He did.
Oh, he did.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, there's another thing that happened. I mean, there was I just posted, there was a Bay Area labor conference for Palestine of about 250 to 300 trade unionists in Oakland. And the Zionists tried to shut it down. It was at a school, and they closed the school. But so the conference met outside, but it was very successful. And we had a panel there. We had two panels, one on journalists, and we connected with the Palestinian journalist, Rania, for the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate. And they're calling for an international day of action on Women's Day to defend women journalists of Gaza. So we're going to be having an action at the San Francisco Chronicle and their newspapers around the world that people could have actions around defending the women journalists and Palestinian journalists. Over 124 have been killed, 16 women journalists.
Okay.
So that's one thing that happened. But this labor rally or labor education conference it's the largest labor meeting on Palestine that's been held in the United States. And people agreed at the end of it that they were going to work to have an action on May Day, work action on May Day. So people are organizing around that. The two unions in the Bay Area that are most active around politics or worker class issues are the Oakland Education Association and ILWU. So there's going to be actions on May Day, but there were a lot of unionists there who are learning about Zionism, and particularly the whole question of the AFL-CIO, which Carol was talking about earlier. Because you can't talk about Zionism and imperialism without talking about the AFL-CIO, the AFT, and these unions who have been supporting the Zionist regime, who are Zionists.
Right.
Let me just clarify. Most people are unaware of the fact that the Zionist, you have a pro-imperialist, but you have a Zionist bureaucracy in the unions that have politically blocked action by workers, even to discuss it. We had an action where we picketed the Labor Council in San Francisco because they stopped workers from discussing resolutions. I think maybe we should talk about similar actions around the country, picketing these labor councils where they refuse to take action. The AFL-CIO said you can't even talk about it, what's going on in Palestine. So it would focus from young trade unions who are getting involved, the role of the trade union bureaucracy politically in supporting imperialism and Zionism.
Just to clarify then, at this meeting, you said the Zionists disrupted it, and you guys had to move outside, or you pushed the Zionists?
No, they shut the school down.
So where did you hold the meeting afterwards?
Outside, in the front of the school and in the parking lot.
How many people were you?
300.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a video. I mean, I can put the video up in the conference, but it was
that would be interesting.
It was very big. It was a very big conference, very big.
Eric, did you?
The DSA, the PSL boycotted the conference.
Okay, but yeah,
and they boycotted the ILW meeting too. So
okay. Eric, did you want to give a report, or did you?
Yes, I wanted to give a report. I attended an online meeting. It was not a discussion meeting, it was just presentations, but it was from the other side of the labor movement, in the sense that it was a new organization called National Labor for a Ceasefire. My old comrade from Columbia years ago, Juan Gonzalez, chaired it, and the speakers included Sean Fain and the head of the National Education Association, and also two of the two Congress people. I'm blanking.
Talib and the St. Louis
Right.
Congresswoman.
Yeah. So this is Steve's referring to one part of the contradiction, which is the unions that are actually still not breaking with the support for Israel, as he says, that which has been long historic. These unions have broken, and there were very forceful presentations about stopping the genocide and so on. There was one word that, as far as I know, I'm pretty certain was not spoken by anyone, and that was the word Biden, which is the side of the contradiction, because, of course, the UAW has actually endorsed Biden for president, but Biden is the one person in the world who is most enabling the genocide by insisting on providing ammunition to the Israeli armed forces. And I think his actions over the past day have even sharpened that contradiction. People have been sharply criticizing the airdrop that the United States carried out, basically saying, obviously, if you have to airdrop aid into Gaza, the Israelis are blocking it. Why don't you just tell the Israelis to let it in and stop their ammunition so that they will not be able to, they will be constrained in stopping it. So I just think that, this is the other side of the contradiction within the labor movement, is that you have the unions that have sharply broken with this policy and are sharply criticizing what's happening in Gaza, but are not willing to direct that protest against Biden, who is, single-handedly enabling this war. So there was a pretty good turnout. They said that there were 500 people online. It was 1 hour. They didn't permit Q&A, so there was no input to it. But so that's the other side of the equation.
Eric, was there any action decided on or out of this meeting?
No, it was purely educational.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to report? Okay. I mean, let's just have a shorter or next phase of a discussion. Just we've touched on this already, but what is our critique of the existing movement? I mean, I see two things from my own experience and then coming out of this discussion, but I'd like to hear from others. One is those kind of leading this movement, there's no real opportunity or very little for democratic input on where it's going to go. So Carol, for example, in New York, our group at College of Staten Island, I think, is supposed to be like an arm of this of the CUNY group, CUNY for Palestine, and some of the other groups that are calling the actions. But I don't know of any of these meetings that they're having or any opportunity to present, our arguments about where it needs to go. And I think this is because they're fearful of people being targeted, infiltration from state forces. But that's what I see as one problem, and that's been a problem of organizing for our meeting, being able to go to these groups and raising these ideas and inviting people to this meeting. The other is there's these, it's kind of pageantry. It's great that they had these big protests in New York, but they've been doing a lot of these, but they haven't been, as Ethan brought up, very strategic about going to where the crime is actually happening, the arms manufacturer or the transport. We did see some of that in Italy, going with the port workers, but we haven't seen a lot of that. And it reminds me of post-Katrina New Orleans, where we had these big protests, people coming in, but they wouldn't go to the public housing where the demolitions were happening. They wouldn't go to the schools that were being shut down and connecting with the direct action protests that were happening there. So that's what I see as kind of two real problems with the existing movement. And we want to take it in a different direction. But I'd like to hear from some others on the critique and of where the existing movement is and how we can move it in a different direction.
Well, I think it's very undemocratic, as you just sort of laid out. You can't go to those groups, CUNY for Palestine, this for Palestine, and make suggestions. In fact, one of the criticisms that I had from my resolution, which was the attack on the AFL-CIO, was that I didn't go to CUNY for Palestine first and ask them how they would write it. And I said, but this isn't a CUNY for Palestine resolution. This is my resolution. And so she refused, this is Sophia, she refused to support it. And a number of the people in these groups who had delegates in the union, refused to support it because it wasn't written in the way, that they wanted it, right? I talked about the union bureaucracy. And so people just don't think about the union bureaucracy as being, criminal in this way. And so they don't want to bring it up either. They're just, I'm going to CUNY for Palestine, or my chapter chair refused to support my resolution because he said, you're trying to blow up the union, Carol. And I said, I'm not blowing up the union. I'm trying to talk about the role of the unions. And very few people really, I got different phone calls from this webinar that United Front Committee put out about the unions. So I got different responses from workers, and one guy I saw yesterday on the demonstration was from the RWDSU, but nobody even knows what unions are, let alone that the money that they're putting into maintaining this war. And okay, but the problem is the people who are organizing these demonstrations and actions are not people who either know anything about it or care, and so they don't open up for speakers to speak about it either. And so we have to figure out how to either push it or organize our own demonstrations, and hopefully people will come. But without understanding the role of the AFL-CIO, they're getting Biden, that's true, and thankfully, even though the AFL-CIO is endorsing him, and so is the UAW. So they're integrally connected, and we have to make sure that people understand this, or there won't be any real fundamental change. And that's what we need to do. We need to get the workers to stop shipping fucking arms to Israel.
Okay.
The workers are here. They're in the center.
Okay, I'm going to go to Ethan next, but I just want to clarify with Carol. Did you actually try to go to the meeting that organized the groups that organized the action yesterday in New York that brought out 7 to 10?
I didn't know about it.
Yeah, it's not really open.
Look, Jay, their PSL.
Steve, Ethan is next. Hold on, Ethan.
Yeah, they're PSL meetings. You had a question. The
Oh.
PSL organized. That's what they organize these protests. PSL does not have organizing meetings, democratic organizing meetings. Do you know that about PSL?
Yeah, I don't think PSL organized the
Yes,
action in New
PSL
York.
organized these meetings. Yes, they did around the
They
country.
organized
Yeah.
the action in New York. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
okay.
I'm not on the ground there, so okay.
Okay, well, that's who organized it.
Okay, so Ethan, and then we'll go to Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add in, yeah, a lot of the ones around here have been like with groups like PSL, SEIU, the bureaucracy is one of the problems. And before I go, I have to go get ready for my IWW meeting, so I'll be checking out after this one. But I feel like maybe one of the things we'll need to rail against is one of the other people brought up is really like the same instance, and I think it was brought up a little earlier, how like the AFL-CIO backed Pinochet, that element is disconnected from those unions. So
Right.
like really what one of the things that we'll want to do is we'll want to get in touch with like the individual on the ground, who's on the floor, who's on the thing, and really like bring up with them, that, because like I don't think that I'm gonna win, and I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry, I'm still getting to know everyone in the meeting, but somebody did bring up, yeah, PSL doesn't have these on the ground meetings. They don't set up these if you will, the Soviets, if as you will, as part of it. They set up a bureaucracy. That's the primary element of them or any other ML group. So
Sure.
I think the going forward we need to be focusing on more democratic institutions,
Right.
trying to do that. That's kind of and what I'm going to do is before I go, I'm going to put in the chat the two groups I'm kind of starting up. You can write down these things and get we'll consider working with that. But like I don't want to I feel like that's what we need to be doing.
Okay. Before I know, Ethan, you're going to leave, but I just wanted to clarify. Would you have the forces in Tampa to organize some type of action if we did try to mount this coordinated global day of action? Do you have the forces on the ground that could carry out?
So first off, I'm in Gainesville, not Tampa.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately,
Right state,
Tampa,
wrong city. All right.
yeah. However, what I can do is I can put out like the call of what I can do. Again, what I can do is I can later today I have a meeting. I can bring it to the Gainesville branch, see what they're interested in building towards.
Okay.
We have our contacts in those, not on the ground right now, but I would like to stay in contact and see what we can coordinate in the future.
Okay.
Like,
That's good. Great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great. So it's a possibility, you're saying, basically.
It's a possibility in the near future.
Okay.
What I need to do is I need to work with that, and I can like give them if you want me to, I can give them like the info for this group and stuff too.
Okay.
Maybe we can coordinate in the future.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's go. Eric V has not weighed in on this. So let's give Eric V a chance. Then we'll go to Steve and then Eric Lerner.
Okay. Well, I'm just to react a bit on the PSL. They seem to have this approach. They basically control a large part of the protest organizing, right, that goes on within this country. And that seems to be their mechanism of recruitment. And while a lot of kind of similarly placed Trotskyist or Maoist groups have faded, they have maintained, at least a relative level of prominence. But in the grand scheme of things, they're not prominent. They're not well known in society. They don't have a large membership or anything. They simply are able to continue to recruit people at a low level, seemingly through these kinds of protests. And there does seem to be a very bureaucratic structure where there's a large divide between their on the ground membership and the people who are, in fact, long timers in the organization. If anyone disagrees with that, please correct me on it. But I would surmise that part of the reason that they want to operate in this way is because they consider that viable for their recruiting strategy. And I just wonder, well, this is an unrelated question in a sense, but it'll circle back, which is the kinds of things that have happened that have been disruptive have been blockading of bridges, airports, mostly of transportation, oftentimes in large cities. These involve large numbers of people. I don't know if the PSL has been important in organizing those demonstrations. It seems like those demonstrations come more out of a more directed Palestine-focused activism with other organizations. So I guess one question would be, those of you who are emphasizing the idea of labor action or action on the arms industry, is blockading of transportation a parallel kind of means of disruption in your minds? But also, given the numbers that it takes to succeed in blockading transportation, and I think the numbers for blockading, arms traffic or something would be similar. That's a very high bar. As the PSL sees it, they need to recruit thousands of people to even do non-disruptive actions, in essence. So, sort of, what is the path forward for socialists to arrive at a state where we do have the level of popularity within the labor movement to have a labor action? I know it happens sometimes at the Port of Oakland. And how do we get the popularity to have a mass movement? Right.
Okay. Well, thanks, Eric. We'll go to Steve. Steve, just before we go to you, I just wanted to clarify with Carol. I know, so I thank you for informing us. PSL Answer organized the New York demo, but we also have seen in our lifetime, and other Palestinian groups have also mounted pretty large demos. But I think they operate the same way. They're not open meetings, right? They just kind of call the action. So it's the same basic problem. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, well, I mean, the the DSA was the initiator of this labor conference, the largest labor conference on Palestine that's been held. And I think a similar one might be able to take place in New York with Labor for Palestine. There have been labor rallies that they've had there. So that might be a possibility of connecting with other labor people. Having an action at the AFL-CIO to protest their support of the Zionist regime would be important. East Coast action at the AFL-CIO in Washington, D.C. to protest their support for Zionism and the genocide would be important. To focus workers in this country who are in unions that the union bureaucracy is actually helping this genocide. I think we have a political task to do, to educate people about the role of the union bureaucracy and fight, for labor to take direct action. So the other thing about the PSL is a Stalinist organization. They support the Chinese bureaucracy. They support Putin. They're not interested in building a democratic workers' movement, and they're not interested in a workers' party in the United States. They're telling people join PSL. So they are an obstacle to build a mass workers' democratic movement. And I think we have to organize to build a non-sectarian working class united front against imperialist war. That's what this rallies on the 24th were. It was an international united front, and there was actions in Japan, many Argentina, around the world. So we have to, I believe, work with this international united front against the war and find out when they're going to have another action and join with that to build an international working class pole of a direct action. Disrupting is not going to stop the war. Strikes will, mass movements that shut down cities will, But I think we have to tie the struggle of workers, like city workers in San Francisco, the workers in New York who are under attack. You know, you haven't had a contract at CUNY. What's happening with that? And that's not tied to the money that's going for the war. So we need to connect the struggles of workers and their issues here with the imperialist war and with the money that's going to the war, and raise that in the unions and say we need to have a strike with not just around our own issues, but the issues of imperialist war and the money that's being spent for the war, to make that connection. And then we can get some traction with workers about why they need to connect the fight against imperialist war and the attack on Palestinians and the genocide with what's happening in this country.
So, but the forces that called this February 24th meeting, I mean, do they operate any differently than the way PSL Answer organizes their actions? Is there a meeting? Can we attend? Can we give input? How does this come
They have an
about?
international network, yeah, and we work with them. We're part of that network.
Well, is there a
I
meeting we
put
can
in a
attend?
Cobus, a link to their thing, and Doro Chiba in Japan had an action as well. And they had actions in Argentina. The Workers' Party in Argentina endorsed it. So they had actions all over the world. It was an international day of action around a united front against the Zionist war, and also against the war in Ukraine, for the abolishment of NATO and you know, closing down all U.S. bases around the world.
Were there other demands around, as you mentioned, CUNY?
I think I sent a
privatization?
statement. Well, I sent a statement of this
Okay. Okay.
previously.
Okay,
The
I'll take a look. I'll take a look. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. Eric?
Okay, well, first I want to ask a couple of questions and then take the floor back for a comment. I mean, Tommaso, there obviously is these mass mobilizations. Through these mass mobilizations, do you or your organization have contact with workers in any of the defense industries in Italy?
Eric, you said defensive.
The armaments. Italy has a substantial armaments industry. Do you have contacts through these mass mobilizations with any workers or rank and file groups or unions within the defense industry, the armaments industry? I shouldn't use their stupid euphemism. Armaments industry has nothing to do with defense.
No.
Yeah. I personally don't know. I know that we have a contact with the previously mentioned SICOBAS trade grassroots trade union, which called the demonstration, and I don't know if we have some contact with armaments. You said armament unions,
right?
Related to armament. I take the chance to underline that at this big demonstration, the major trade unions neither joined nor promoted it, and was disappointing and shameful. And we have a tendency inside the major left-wing trade unions called CGIL, and we are let's say we are fighting inside the organization. And just to underline this thing. But I have to ask my other comrades of the party about what you asked me.
And Steve, within the ILWU, are there groups that are agitating for the ILWU to do something with blocking shipments through the ports? Because I know that there was an action up in Oakland. Was it Oakland or was it up in Seattle? I forget. At the start of the war, is there any people you're in touch with within the ILWU? Because obviously, aside from the armaments industry itself, the ports are a very good bottleneck that unions can disrupt. Is there any, are you in contact with anybody who's contemplating that within the ILWU?
The ILWU has discussed that. I mean, I put a video up of the meeting. Check
Uh-huh.
the chat and look at the video. They had a whole meeting on Palestine and labor, what labor should do about it. The
Are there any
ILWU is
specific
in a
actions or dates
position.
for actions contemplated?
Well, there are no Zim ships. I mean, just having a protest, there have been many protests the ILWU have had. They had a protest in 2008 against the Iraq War. As I said, the next action that they're talking about, work action around the war, is probably going to be on May Day, but there may be other actions. Yeah. There may
Okay.
be other actions. I mean, the other thing is their bases in the United States. Their bases in Italy. They're US bases. And there should be action at the US bases. That's part of the war machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well, my comment is this. I mean, maybe we don't have the forces for this, and maybe this is too 20th century an idea, but it seems to me it would be good if people are any of us are geographically local to some of the sympathetic unions plants. United Electrical Workers, for example, has been very forthright in opposing the war. And I know that they have organized in industries that are defense suppliers and so on. Obviously, so is UAW. One possible way of getting in touch with workers is the old-fashioned way of actually flyering plants at shift changes. It's can be quite effective when we can't make contact electronically. In terms of the forces required, if there is sympathy at the plant for, a demonstrative shutdown, it doesn't take a lot of people to form a picket line, and for the union, for the workers there, with or without the support of their bureaucracy, to say, well, we can't cross this picket line. So, maybe this is something that's way beyond our small forces, but it is a way of going directly to workers at key plants. And I mean, as people know, in the United States, a significant fraction of the economy is oriented towards defense. I would say a quarter of the plants in the United States are in some way defense contractors, not necessarily their entire output. So maybe this is a crazy idea, but it is a way of making contact with workers without mediation. Anybody thinks that they have the forces to do this?
I just have a question, which
So,
is
yes.
apart. I don't, apart from the UAW and UE, are the plants that make ammunition and so forth, are they organized? And if so, under what union? I mean, I'm sure that a quarter, first of all, the union density in the country is relatively low, of course, but you know, there's lots of manufacturing that may contribute in some way to the military's continued existence, but is not actually being demonstrably used in Gaza right now.
Carol, you wanted to respond to Eric's question?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Does anybody want to respond to Eric's?
Well, in New York, I mean, certainly don't, the sympathy is not with that. And in New York, we don't really have bases here. We have banks that, I mean, I would recommend that we go to banks, but apparently people have gone to banks. But we don't have, you know, I mean, I don't know where the plants are. There's one in obviously Travis, but I don't think we have the forces to go ahead and, you know,
Well, I mean, there have been actions. I mean, in New Jersey, there in December there was a protest. I think it's Elberon. I forgot the name of the arms manufacturer, but they did have an action which I think was great. But if we could, you know, coordinate these actions, that would be a real advance in the movement. If you got 7,000 people in New York, I mean, if you can bring half them to a plant, that would be huge. But Eric, I don't know if they had a union there. I don't know that.
I mean, the last time I know that New Yorkers went out to New Jersey was when the Zim ship was coming in. And
Yeah.
that was quite a long time ago. And the whole, as I was saying, the whole direction is, you know, not about workers and not about stopping ships and things like that. So, you know, I mean, there's no focus on, could somebody from New Jersey bring over some propaganda to New York on demonstrations? There isn't any focus here about going to shut down anything in New Jersey, for instance. If a Zim ship was coming in, then people might consider, then that's what happened the last time, but
But
I don't,
okay, well, look, you know, this meeting was initially called to see if we can pull together global coordinated actions at arms manufacturers, at shipping points, at military bases, to really exercise some real power. We don't have the forces at this point. I mean, we have someone in Gainesville that might be able to do something. Maybe Tommaso could pull something together in Bologna. I mean, the most concrete thing we have is what Steve brought up, is this May Day action. I mean, that's 2 months away, but possibly that's something our forces could work around in the localities where we're located. That's what I see as the most concrete action that we could connect with. If others want to weigh in on that, go ahead.
If anyone can point us to articles that have been written on the structure of the arms industry, that could be, you know, condensed into a flyer or something, or that could direct us to, you know, sites that might be in our vicinity, including around the world, for that matter.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful, is to get a map of defense armaments industry sites. I mean, to answer your question, obviously, the majority of them probably are not organized, but the union density in aerospace is actually higher than average. there are a lot of defense plans that are organized, even though, probably not nowhere close to 50%, but certainly more than the 6% that's averaged throughout the private sector. But yeah, I agree. I'll try and see whether I can find such a map. But I kind of agree with Jay. I think I think the two next steps is, yeah, we should find out more about the May Day. May Day is a long ways off. 100,000 people could really starve to death by May Day. But I think that, those who do have the contact with the biggest forces in Florida, in Italy, should be seen whether there are any actions that can be taken. Because I do think that if we took disruptive action in even 3 or 4 places internationally simultaneously, it could really set an example for much broader forces to get involved. Obviously, Steve, if there are any meetings planned concerning the next International Day of Action, are there any meetings planned for planning the next International Day of Action by the group you're talking about? Because it would be good for us to participate.
I don't know right now.
Okay.
Shirley, you want to weigh in? And I'd like to hear from Day, others that have not spoken so far. Your perspective is important as well. Shirley?
Thank you. As an educator, I was really surprised that the president of the NEA attended the event where Eric Lerner participated. That's correct, Eric?
Yes.
Do you recall at all what this person may have said or point of view?
Well, again, basically, she and Sean were very emphatic in denouncing the Israeli attack on Gaza and in calling for a ceasefire. But, what was totally incoherent and contradictory was that they did not say that any protests should be aimed against Joe Biden. And as I say, I could almost swear, it was a long meeting, it was an hour, but I could almost swear that the word was never mentioned. The fact that the president of the United States is, even without congressional authorization, transferring these huge number of bombs and shells to Israel was simply never mentioned. So there's this complete disconnect in which these leaders are obviously responding to a huge consensus within their membership that we have to act against this slaughter. Which, we've all lived in this country for a long time. It's very unusual, very early in a war, for there to be such opposition, really across many dividing lines. And Sean Fain did comment on that. He said that, the extent of opposition was much, much greater than at a similar period back in 1965 in the Vietnam War.
Well, I think the public has been very ignorant, including myself, about the events occurring now and in the past. But I'm going to contact this leader and see what I can find out about what they plan to do, if anything, on May Day.
Right. Um,
Forgot I muted myself. Steve, is your hand up from before? Or did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Okay.
said that there's a call by the International Journalists and the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate for a day of action on Women's Day, this coming Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, so people maybe could do something in the New York Times or in front of their newspaper about the murder of 16 women journalists, and 124 journalists have been murdered in Palestine, in Gaza, and the West Bank.
Okay.
That's something people can do now, for this week,
Mhm.
and raise the issue of the genocide and also the corporate media's complicity with
Ah.
this genocide.
And you put that in the chat box on the Women's Day action?
I can put it in, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think we can all agree on that we should try to connect with International Women's Day action wherever we are. I wanted to put out a proposal, but before I do that, I wanted to give Dave Spencer the floor to give an opportunity to weigh in her reflections.
Thanks, Jay. Well, I'm really isolated out here in a very small town, and the people that I'm around are very religious and actually Christian.
Where are you exactly? In California, right? But where?
Yeah, by the Sequoia National Park. It's just a very small town called Three Rivers.
Okay.
So the people here are very Christian Zionist. And so they're, and this is a very agricultural area surrounding my town. So I don't have a group here. I do know that there is the Lemoore Naval Base close to me, but without a group, I don't really feel like I could do much in this area. I'm going to be moving in probably 5 months down to the LA area, back to Northridge area. And I don't know if Mike's group has any actions planned. They do have a meeting today
Right.
that I know that you mentioned at 2 o'clock Pacific time
Right.
about Ukraine.
Okay, so how about, we're coming up an hour and a half here. I think we need to wrap it up, but May Day seems it is a ways off. And as Eric brought up, if things continue in this direction, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people dead, not from bombing, but from disease and hunger. But with our forces, if we could work to doing an action on May Day, and if we could come back together, say in a month, early April, to in contrast the way that most of these groups operate, one, to decide what our demands are, democratically decide, and to talk about the actions that we're going to try to mount in the areas. And that might include connecting with an existing protest, but putting out our flyer with our demands that connect the war abroad, Carol, which we're trying to do at CUNY, with the war at home. So that's a proposal for where we go. Any reactions?
Sounds good.
Eric, okay.
Yeah, I think that that's realistic. I mean, obviously, we still need to get in touch with much larger forces to get, even a small critical mass together in 2 or 3 locations. So, what date are you proposing specifically, Jay? Look at the calendar.
The holiday, what is at the end of March? So,
What holiday?
Oh, the holiday for CUNY.
yeah. Well, I'm here in Columbia. They follow kind of the Catholic holidays, so it'll be Easter. Yeah.
Oh, Easter.
How about April 6th? No, excuse me, Sunday, April 7th.
Well, that would be bad for me.
Okay.
April 8th actually is an event in the United States and Mexico It is a total solar eclipse.
Oh, you're
Uh,
okay. Yeah, right.
30 million people will be able to watch it, weather permitting. And Ivy and I are actually flying to where the weather is best in
Since
Moscow.
Eric controls the Zoom, I think that should take precedent. So how about it would still give us, more than 2 weeks if we did April 14th, Sunday, April 14th.
Good.
Tommaso, Bene,
Yeah, good for me too.
Steve, Eric.
I'm okay with
there-
that.
There may be another call from this international network. So I'll find out when that's going to be. And I think we
Okay.
can link up with that.
Okay, well, we obviously are going to all stay in touch by internet. So if there's a need for having an interim meeting, because we have an earlier date that we could link up with, we can do that.
Okay, but let me just confirm. So tentatively, we're going with April 14th, but Steve, you're gonna inform us about this other meeting that's coordinating the Global Day of Action.
Yeah, I'll find out when it's going to be.
Okay, if we could attend. But I don't think ours, because of the timing, would conflict with that, if that's also gonna be on the 14th. Maybe,
I think Steve is saying something earlier, like
oh, okay.
March.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we should
So
just,
again, but our contribution would be an attempt to organize democratically, and that might be an incentive to so many people in this movement, but that don't really have they're kind of alienated from it as well, because there's no kind of democratic control. So I think we should emphasize that. And our focus on connecting the war abroad to the war at home, which is what we're going to have to do if we're going to get out of silos and build a powerful movement that's going to scare the ruling class.
Are you getting out the word to all the different groups, or is it just us?
No,
Like-
I attempt with my contacts I did one at CUNY, but in New Jersey as well. Some networks I have intervened in. Obviously it would be better if we could do even more, but
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I'm asking is because we have a strike school. Do you know about that on Wednesday?
of course, yeah.
And so
Oh.
we can talk about it, that we're planning to do
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
that would be
Right.
great.
And the
Okay.
other thing is
Good.
Steve and I are going to the Labor Notes Conference. So if we
Okay.
have anything that we have nailed down, we can bring that information out. There are thousands of people there.
Oh, that would be
Maybe
very
if we
good.
could work on a
What date is
flyer
that?
with a Zoom link on there.
What is the date of that? Of
The
Labor Note
conference itself starts on the 19th,
of
April-
March?
April 19th.
Oh, yeah.
So by that time, if we have something nailed down by the 14th or so, we
Right.
can bring that information out to Labor Notes. Because
That
That
be
would be
terrific.
great. So let's try to work on a flyer with our 2 points, democratic organization and our demands linking the war abroad and at home, with an invite QR code and we could circulate this on our list to get approval and then send it out.
But we really have to think about where, like, the event yesterday was in Washington Square Park, and for people who in New York, I mean, it was like incredibly crowded. You
Right.
couldn't hear the speakers. And then finally we walked up 6th Avenue because we got out, we were like caged. So we walked up 6th Avenue up to 42nd Street. But there's no direction. There's
Right,
like,
right,
I want to
right.
hit such and such a place because they are complicit. So stand in front of that place and say how this company, none of that. It's like the same slogans over and
Right.
over.
Oh, yeah, it's,
From
but
the-
I was thinking of
Yeah.
that for this meeting, we should have had, you were there, but a flyer to put out inviting people. We just didn't do that.
We have to have a place that we want to hit in
Yeah, right.
different cities. So in New York, I'm going to start thinking about it, like where we can, because it's just the same
Right.
from the river to the sea, from the sea to the
You-
river, I mean, really, that's the same
Yeah.
slogans, but like, what is this company actually doing? How is it investing?
Right.
And when people say, and if we don't get it, shut it down, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Shut it
Okay,
down.
so let's
Thank you.
okay,
Well,
so we're
look-
gonna the April 14th, and we're gonna try to get out a flyer in the next couple weeks.
Who's gonna work on the flyer?
Okay, Eric, I'm gonna draft you and me, and we'll work on language, and then we'll send it out for people to get
Okay.
feedback on. Is that all right? Who
All
else would
right.
like to, Dave, would you, I know you're isolated out there. And you have some skills, don't you, on making flyers? Do you have any skills on that?
Maybe I've done websites before, so
Well, damn,
I'm-
It's more complicated.
you're gonna be drafted. Okay,
Right.
yeah,
Or
all right, well, because I'm not good on making and the QR code stuff too. So, okay,
okay, tell me what you want to put on it and I'll put it, I'll see what I can do.
okay, great.
So
Okay,
let's
great.
have a place, let's have a direction of focus as opposed to just building another, another meeting. Where do we want to go is my question.
I'll
Where-
do
where's
some
that taking
reading on defense industries, armaments
Okay.
Well,
industries.
I mean, I volunteered to try and research that map to see whether we can come up with some targets.
So this way we can have like a united front around getting together as opposed to, we have a united around getting together and calling for the shutdown of so-and-so. And so for people who don't necessarily agree with everything, at least we can agree on shutting this place down, right? That this is like this bank or
So,
whatever.
this is about a meeting. One, it's gonna be democratic. Two, it's about focusing on strategic points in the war machine to shut it down. That's where this movement has to be taken if
Right.
we're going to shut down the Zionists and their genocide.
Right,
Okay, is that? I mean, because that's been our critique of the movement, anti-democratic and not strategic.
right. So Eric, do you want to get back to us like in 2 weeks about places that you think that are strategic enough that people in the East Coast and the West Coast and wherever we're leaving should go?
I mean, we're gonna try, yeah, I'm gonna try and see whether, I don't know how difficult, I did do an initial effort. It's not easily available. It's not 10 minutes available, such a map. But I'm gonna work on seeing whether people have mapped this out.
Okay, but this will be
Aren't there,
US,
aren't there
right?
docks, aren't there docks? ILA docks in New Jersey?
Yeah, there certainly are.
Yeah, well, maybe you should start leafleting the longshoremen. Talking to them.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're right there. They're delivering Zim cargo in New Jersey.
Right.
You know
Well,
that? Zim cargo is going out of New Jersey. It's not going out of the West Coast. The ILW stopped it. So if you
Zim.
can stop the Zim ships and cargo going out of New Jersey, that would be a big
well,
step.
that would be
Well,
great.
but
Steve,
Eric
if you
and
could
Warren
send
can't
me-
do it on his own. That's why we've got to open
Well, you
this
can have
up.
leaflet and you can have a
There-
flyer.
there
and you
have
can
been
I
leaflet
could,
it.
palace-
Steve, if you could send me any information you have on that.
They had a rally there. There was a rally, I think, last year of a couple thousand people on the docks.
Right, this is not the ILA, the Palestinian movement.
Oh,
Yes,
they were picketing the docks at the ILA.
correct. If we can open this up, we're gonna try to
Well,
reach
yeah, I
out
mean,
to
it
those
doesn't
groups.
require you can start leafleting now and start talking to longshoremen there.
Yeah.
ILA longshoremen, they're on the East Coast.
Yeah,
And they're still, and they're delivering Zim cargo.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
that's one thing right there in your home.
Okay, so
But-
this will be good. At this meeting on the 14th, we'll have done the research targeting potential sites for the May Day action. So this will be really helpful. Tommaso, if you could bring in any from Italy, some potential targets, and if we could maybe bring in some Italian comrades, that would be great.
Hey, sure, yeah.
Okay, we've got our marching orders democratically decided, right? So we've got a date. we've got kind of the idea, our strategic focus, the research responsibilities. Shirley, why don't you close this out briefly with a comment?
Well, I want us to recall and not forget about the people who want to participate but are physically unable to. And I don't know if the one who's designing the flyer out in California has any skills in that area to how to set that up.
Are you saying you have some of these skills as well?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
No,
I'm thinking now, when I contact the NEA, I can ask them how we can increase participation.
Oh, definitely. That would be a great
So I'm going to go
contribution
in
from
that
your part,
direction.
Shirley. Great, that would be really helpful. Really helpful. Okay, folks, I have someone preparing dinner here, so I'm ready to dig in.
Nice. Enjoy.
All right,
Okay.
guys.
Yeah.
And everyone, manja.
Wow, yeah,
Okay,
man.
manja. Okay. Okay, folks, this was small, but a good meeting, I think. Take
Oh.
care.
Yes, I think so.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Signing off.
See you.